The winter of 1944 arrived quietly, the kind of cold that seeped into bones without warning. In the headquarters of the U.S. Third Army, maps covered the walls like living creatures, their colored lines shifting daily as the front crept eastward. Most Allied commanders believed the German army was finished. Paris had been liberated, supply lines stretched deep into France, and morale was high. The enemy, everyone said, was exhausted. Everyone, except one man. Colonel Oscar W. Koch sat alone at a long table scattered with reports, rail movement summaries, prisoner interrogations, and weather forecasts. As Patton's chief intelligence officer, he had learned to distrust optimism. War, in his experience, punished those who believed too much in good news. He adjusted his glasses and stared at a report from aerial reconnaissance. It showed rail traffic increasing in western Germany, far more than it should have been if the Germans were truly collapsing. Koch leaned back slowly. He had seen this pattern before. Not this exact situation, but the rhythm of it, the quiet before violence. Units disappearing from one sector, reappearing in another. Radio silence where there should have been chatter. Fuel stockpiles moving not away from the front, but toward it. These were not the actions of an army preparing to surrender. They were the actions of an army preparing to strike. Outside, soldiers joked about being home by Christmas. Koch did not smile when he heard them. He kept reading. Day after day, the evidence stacked up. German divisions that Allied intelligence believed destroyed were somehow reforming. Panzer units, supposedly without fuel, were being quietly refitted. New Volksgrenadier divisions were appearing on paper, their strength underestimated, their purpose unclear. And then there was the Ardennes, thick forests, narrow roads, poor visibility. A place everyone agreed the Germans would never attack through again. Everyone except Koch. He marked the Ardennes on the map with a pencil, circling it once, then twice. It was weakly held. American units there were resting, refitting, inexperienced in places. If Koch were a desperate German commander, humiliated but not defeated, that was exactly where he would strike. The problem was not the evidence. The problem was convincing others to believe it. On December 9, 1944, Koch requested time to brief General George S. Patton. Patton was many things, brilliant, aggressive, controversial, but he was not blind. He respected intelligence when it was presented clearly and backed by reason. Still, Koch knew the risk. If he was wrong, he would be remembered as the man who cried wolf when the war was nearly won. Patton entered the room in his polished helmet, ivory-handled pistols at his side, eyes sharp as ever. He wasted no time on pleasantries. "All right, Koch," Patton said. "What have you got that's worth stealing my time?" Koch stood, calm but firm. He began not with conclusions, but with facts. Rail movements. Prisoner statements that contradicted each other in telling ways. Fuel dumps hidden from air reconnaissance. Weather reports predicting heavy fog and snow, conditions that would ground Allied aircraft. Patton listened without interruption, pacing slowly, occasionally stopping to stare at the map. Then Koch pointed to the Ardennes. "The Germans are going to attack here," he said. "Soon. With everything they have left." The room fell silent. Outside, the wind rattled the windows. Patton stared at the map for a long moment. Many other generals believed the Ardennes was a quiet sector, ideal for rest. Even Eisenhower's staff assessed the likelihood of a major German offensive as low. Koch knew all this. He said it anyway. "They are desperate," Koch continued. "This is not a spoiling attack. This is all or nothing. They intend to split the Allied lines, capture fuel, and force a political collapse in the West before the Soviets finish them in the East." Patton stopped pacing. He turned, eyes burning with interest rather than disbelief. "When?" Patton asked. "Within days," Koch replied. "Possibly within a week." Patton nodded slowly. He did not argue. He did not dismiss the idea. Instead, he asked questions, sharp, specific, relentless. Koch answered each one with precision. When the briefing ended, Patton dismissed everyone else and kept Koch behind. "You really believe this?" Patton said. "Yes, sir," Koch replied. "I would stake my career on it." Patton smiled faintly, the kind of smile that appeared when a challenge excited him. "Good. Then we'll be ready." What Patton did next would later be seen as genius. At the time, it looked like unnecessary paranoia. He ordered contingency plans drawn up for a rapid pivot north, an entire army turning on short notice. Staff officers complained it was impossible. Logistics officers said it would cause chaos. Patton ignored them. He trusted Koch. When the German attack finally came on December 16, it exploded out of the Ardennes exactly as Koch had predicted. Panzer divisions smashed through American lines under cover of fog and snow. Units were overrun. Communication collapsed. For days, it looked as if the Germans had achieved the impossible. Across Allied headquarters, shock turned to panic. But in Patton's command post, there was no surprise, only urgency. Patton turned to his staff. "Gentlemen," he said, "we're going to relieve Bastogne." Within hours, Third Army was already moving. While other commanders scrambled to understand what was happening, Patton executed the pivot he had planned weeks earlier. Roads clogged with tanks, trucks, artillery, all moving north in brutal winter conditions. It was one of the most complex maneuvers in U.S. military history, and it worked because it had been anticipated. At Bastogne, the 101st Airborne was surrounded, freezing, low on ammunition. German commanders did not expect relief so soon. They believed the Americans were still reacting. They were wrong. Behind the scenes, Koch continued feeding Patton intelligence, enemy movements, weak points, delays. He tracked German units as they outran their fuel supplies, just as he had predicted. The offensive slowed, then stalled. The weather cleared. Allied airpower returned. The tide turned. When Bastogne was finally relieved, the momentum of the German attack broke. What had begun as Hitler's last gamble became his final catastrophe in the West. After the battle, historians would praise Patton's speed, aggression, and decisiveness. Fewer would mention the quiet intelligence officer who had seen the storm before the clouds formed. Koch did not seek credit. He returned to his reports, his maps, his careful analysis. Patton, however, did not forget. He later told his staff that intelligence, when properly used, was a weapon as powerful as tanks or artillery. He trusted Koch because Koch had never told him what he wanted to hear, only what he needed to know. In a war filled with noise, explosions, and shouting generals, one of the most important warnings was delivered calmly, backed by facts, and spoken before anyone else was ready to listen. That warning did not just save time. It saved lives. The Battle of the Bulge became a symbol of American resilience, but its outcome was shaped days earlier in a quiet room, over a map marked by a man who understood that the enemy's greatest weapon was surprise, and that taking surprise away could decide the fate of an entire campaign. Heroes are often remembered for bold charges and dramatic speeches. But sometimes, the most decisive moment in history belongs to the one who sees the danger first, speaks the truth clearly, and is believed by the right person at exactly the right time.